Breaking news, Meghan Markle.
Yeah. Somehow Meghan was invited to Fortune's Most Powerful Women.
3 minutes ago, Westminster detonated. Phones buzzed. Aides sprinted down stone corridors. Ministers were dragged out of lunches and shoved into side rooms. Something seismic had hit Parliament, and the shockwaves were already tearing through the building. No one knew the details yet, but they all felt the same thing. A political earthquake had just struck the heart of London. The whispers moved faster than the truth. Parliament was preparing an unprecedented intervention into Meghan Markle's new global business venture. Not a review. Not a delay. A full stop. Veteran reporters blinked in disbelief. This wasn't the usual committee chatter or regulatory nitpicking. This was a government machine gearing up to challenge a private international brand run by a duchess thousands of miles away. A confidential briefing, meant for only a handful of senior officials, had leaked. And once it surfaced, Westminster went white-hot. The document described Meghan's rising business empire, beauty, wellness, digital media, high-end partnerships, as a commercial operation blurring lines with royal identity. The tone was sharp, icy, uneasy. Then came the real explosion. MPs rushed forward a fast-tracked motion written at lightning speed. The Royal Titles Commercial Protections Amendment. A bill designed to legally shield royal names, imagery, and royal-adjacent branding from commercial use. Whether intentional or not, the amendment placed Meghan's entire empire directly in the crosshairs. Inside the committee room, the tension was suffocating. One MP accused her brand of expanding beyond any safeguards. Another snapped back, warning Parliament was legislating blind on something they barely understood.
Launch her jams and her products via these new Netflix shops that are opening in kind of malls in America. It doesn't sound like it's not exactly for.
The truth was simple. Meghan's new empire had grown too big, too fast, too globally to ignore. Projected near billion-dollar valuation. Multiple divisions ready for rollout. Hollywood partnerships. A massive launch event reportedly days away. And Parliament, whether motivated by caution, politics, or pure panic, was trying to slam the brakes before the train ever left the station.
William and Catherine being very regal, doing the diplomatic thing. Then, overseas we had Meghan on another red carpet.
Across London, journalists scrambled to verify what their screens were screaming. The government wasn't just monitoring Meghan's business, it was preparing to intervene before the world even saw the full product. Meanwhile, in California, things were calm until Meghan's phone lit up. First one buzz, then several, then dozens. Within minutes, reporters, attorneys, brand partners, executives, everyone wanted answers. Fast. No one on Meghan's team expected the timing, or the intensity, or that lawmakers in another country were drafting legislation that could hit her entire empire before launch day. Some sources said her team snapped instantly into crisis mode. Others claimed they'd anticipated this collision from the moment Meghan stepped out of the royal system. But now it was official. The situation was no longer just business. It was geopolitical theater. Parliament wasn't merely questioning marketing choices. They were discussing restrictions on commercial use of royal-adjacent identity, foreign companies linked to UK titles, branding that could be interpreted as royal symbolism. The irony? Meghan wasn't even operating in the UK. London was trying to police a company in Montecito. Political commentators swarmed. Some argued Parliament had no jurisdiction. Others insisted her influence remained intertwined with her title. A few said MPs were reacting out of fear, scrambling to regulate what they never imagined would grow this big. And then social media ignited. Hashtag Parliament versus Meghan. Hashtag Sussex Empire. Hashtag Let Her Build. Hashtag Royal Blockade. Hashtag Global Duchess. Within an hour, the story was global. American networks blasted coverage. European analysts weighed in. Australian broadcasters debated whether this was integrity or insecurity. And here was the twist no one saw coming. Parliament's attempt to restrict her brand only made it bigger, louder, more visible. The government had unintentionally launched her marketing campaign for her. But Meghan wasn't celebrating. Not yet. This had become a high-stakes geopolitical chess match. Behind closed doors, MPs braced for legal challenges, diplomatic fallout, investor panic, and possible backlash from American partners infuriated by what they saw as political interference. A senior government insider reportedly muttered, "It's like trying to cage a wildfire after it's already left the valley." Meanwhile, Meghan's team stayed silent. No statement, no leak, no cryptic post. A silence that didn't signal fear, but strategy. Because while Parliament tried to seize the narrative, Meghan was already preparing her countermove.
It's very strange to announce deals and then...
And once Meghan made her move, everyone knew the landscape would shift again. Politics, business, the royal dynamic, all of it. This was no longer a brand launch. It had evolved into a global confrontation. A duchess on one side, a government on the other, billions hanging in the balance, and the world watching like it was a championship match. While Westminster tried to regain its footing after the political earthquake it had caused, another shockwave rolled across the Atlantic. American media pounced. Major networks framed Parliament's actions as something far bigger than regulation, something personal. Headlines flashed from New York to Los Angeles. Is the UK targeting a US entrepreneur? Can Parliament police an American business? International branding or international overreach? Legal analysts dissected jurisdiction live on air. Business experts compared the situation to past cross-border battles over intellectual property. Commentators debated whether a royal title could or should affect commerce in another country. But Meghan wasn't focused on the noise, the think pieces, or the cable news frenzy. Her real concern was quieter, more dangerous. Investors. Because behind the PR storms and political commentary, the whispers had begun: uncertainty, hesitation, the kind of murmurs that make billions tremble. And Meghan knew better than anyone. Investors don't fear controversy. They fear instability. And right now, Westminster had just handed them a reason to wonder. Was this the beginning of a branding empire? Or the beginning of a war?
What it was she's trying to trademark the new name for her lifestyle brand, as ever. Remember, previously
Within hours, the pressure around Meghan's empire surged. A few major partners requested urgent clarity calls, the kind that signal real fear of legal fallout. Some were afraid of launch delays, others of reputational blowback. A small handful even hinted they might freeze collaborations until the political dust settled. Behind closed doors, her team worked nonstop. Advisors drafted statements, then deleted them. Lawyers dissected every line of Parliament's proposed amendment, searching for angles. Strategists tried to predict what the royal institution might do next, because everyone knew one thing: if Buckingham Palace publicly backed Parliament, Meghan's entire empire could take a hit big enough to leave a crater. But inside the palace, things were far from unified. Senior courtiers argued among themselves. Some feared the monarchy would look petty for appearing to block a former royal from building a business. Others insisted that letting Meghan expand unchecked could blur the institution's historic boundaries. Whichever faction won would determine whether this spiraled into a full-blown royal crisis. Meanwhile, back in the US, Meghan held what one insider described as the most decisive meeting of her post-royal life. There was no panic, no anger, just strategy. She walked in calm, focused, and razor-sharp. After listening to every lawyer, advisor, and PR expert, she made a move no one expected. She wouldn't fight the legislation. She would outmaneuver it. The plan was bold. She'd accelerate expansion into markets untouched by the amendment, partnerships outside the UK, digital platforms beyond Westminster's reach, and a global campaign positioning her brand as international, not royal. With one decision, she shifted the narrative from conflict to ambition. But online, the firestorm only grew. Social media split into two massive camps, those accusing Parliament of overreach, and those claiming the government had every right to protect royal symbols. Creators posted hourly breakdowns. Commentators dissected political motives. Even celebrities chimed in quietly, liking posts hinting at deeper tensions. Then came the surprise leak. A former MP, speaking anonymously, revealed that the proposal hadn't been universally supported inside Westminster. It had been rushed through by a handful of influential voices determined to protect the crown. The revelation detonated across media. Reporters demanded answers. Opposition parties questioned the urgency. Analysts warned the UK was risking the appearance of interfering with private enterprise. Internal disagreements flared. Some lawmakers complained Parliament had bigger issues to focus on than Meghan Markle's business. Others feared the backlash made the government look reactive and unstable. Through all of it, Meghan stayed silent. Until the next morning, her team released a short, impeccably crafted statement. No emotion. No defensiveness. Just one surgical message. Our focus remains on building a global brand based on integrity, creativity, and community impact. We look forward to continuing our work with partners around the world. 12 calm, strategic words, yet they shifted the entire conversation. Supporters called it classy. Critics called it evasive. Business analysts called it a masterclass in redirection. Even MPs were irritated that she refused to play the angry Duchess role they'd been prepared for. And then came the counterstrike. While Parliament continued debating the amendment, Meghan's team announced a massive expansion into South America, backed by investors with zero UK ties and no interest in Westminster's politics. A global move Parliament had absolutely no control over. The timing was surgical, the message unmistakable. Meghan wasn't fighting the UK. She was outgrowing it. Inside Parliament, confidence turned to unease. Some MPs realized they had underestimated her. Others worried they had unintentionally strengthened her brand. Concerns rose over possible diplomatic or trade tensions with American partners. This was no longer about titles. This was about influence, global influence. Political reporters began framing the situation as a clash between two worlds, the modern celebrity economy versus the centuries-old authority of the British monarchy. Then, the final twist. A senior parliamentary advisor leaked a memo admitting that the legislation might need to be revised for clarity, a quiet signal that Parliament's initial move had been too fast, too aggressive, and potentially unenforceable. For Meghan, it was the quiet victory she needed. Her empire remained intact. Her influence had grown. And the UK's attempt to contain her had become the very story catapulting her brand into a new international spotlight. The conflict wasn't over. Parliament would keep debating the amendment. But the balance of power had shifted. Meghan now stood not as a duchess seeking permission, but as a global force they could no longer ignore.